The very first thing we have to do is really develop resilience.
You should be in control of the area that you are in charge of and you are an expert at.
The most important thing is to listen and be empathetic. How do we get to great outcomes? And great outcomes, really, there's only two things that go into it. If you think you know something, that's pretty scary, right? Because
How do you not get distracted by unrelated or unnecessary work? I just have a system that I follow every single week for this. We are back with another episode of the Do As I Say, Not As I Did podcast, a self-advice show where we answer the real questions about what's going on in your life and in your business. So if you have questions, or you're trying to put out fires, just send us an email and we'll get them on the show. Send those emails through to podcast@joeldtrapani.com. I know that's hard last name. We'll include that in the show notes so you can just copy and paste. But I'm your host, Joel Trapani. And today I'm super excited to be joined by my friend Jamie Fitch. Jamie is one of the co-founders of OnlineMedEd, a company elevating healthcare education to improve the outcomes for medical students, for faculty, and ultimately for patients. As CEO, he built and scaled OnlineMedEd's education, technology, and operations for a decade. He's personally raised over $35 million US and helped over 1 million students in 191 countries. Outside of this, Jamie has an equity stake in nearly 40 companies. I checked that he didn't mean 4, but he meant 40 companies. He's a former advisor, investor, and board member in a variety of industries, including healthcare, education, and market technology. I originally met Jamie at an event in Austin when I was just traveling there for work, and I was blown away by the scale and impact he was making through OnlineMedEd and just what he was doing in the world of education. It was something I'd never seen that kind of scale in Australia. And that conversation, straight away, I was like messaging Jamie like every day, just like, let's catch up again. I was just like so kind of like taken with just how much I could learn from his experiences. And that kind of relationship that I was able to form with Jamie and those early interactions were one of the biggest drivers that led me to picking up my entire life and actually moving to Austin, because I was like, there is something special happening here in the world of education. So it is crazy the kind of impact that one conversation one person can have, and I'm so thankful that I got to meet Jamie just by chance that one night at a networking event. Jamie is an absolute expert at strategic prioritization and growing teams. And I've got a lot of fun questions that I'm excited to get his thoughts on. So let's jump into it. Welcome, mate. Thank you so much for coming on today.
it's the nicest things anyone's ever said about me. I appreciate it.
I'm sure that is not true. But look, before we get into our challenges today, mate, could you tell me a little bit more about what you're working on these days?
Yeah, I'm actually in a sabbatical phase, and so I have 2 young children and have done a lot of great stuff and made the decision to step back and just really enjoy life and reflect. And so these days I'm trying to really just help reduce founder pain at as many companies as possible, taking the lessons I've learned and pay it forward.
I love that. And I very much took advantage of that when I was in Austin and would ask Jamie to come on walks with me close to every week or so, just walk around the lake and asking question after question after question. And so I've asked Jamie thousands of these style of questions, but I picked 3 or 4 that have like sparked in my mind because we've had conversations like this, and I thought Jamie's input was really interesting. So let's jump into it. Let's jump to the first question. This first question is called Entrepreneurship, Distraction, Focus. If you're an entrepreneur, do you deal with distractions? If so, how much have distractions affected you on your journey? What have you done about it? I've recently been looking into shiny object syndrome, distractions, and lack of focus, all of which I go through myself. I'm looking to understand other people's perspectives. How do you deal with this? This is from AI Career.
I mean, life's full of distractions. Of course, everybody experiences that, right? And so what we have to do is really just develop systems, I guess, at the highest level. And taking one step back, the very first thing we have to do is really develop resilience, and so that those distractions don't really impact us the way that they might if we're not being really conscious and really targeting them. But in terms of getting into it, a lot of it's simple stuff. And so it's just getting back to the basics in terms of like time management and just saying, hey, like blocking time. A lot of professionals do this. It doesn't matter the level. Or you hear about people that are calendar slaves, and just basically saying, hey, in this window of time, I'm going to be doing these things, and just really holding yourself accountable to that. And the level that you have to do that depends on how easily you get distracted and how resilient you are. If it's not so bad, maybe it's just like, here's 2 hours I want productive focused work. Here's 2 hours where I want meetings. Here's 2 hours where I'm doing creative thinking. if you're having a challenge with that, it's breaking that down, it's shortening the field, and it's looking at it maybe in 15 or 30-minute time blocks. And it's really just about what it takes for you to get back into that focus. And so when I coach people, that's really it. It's just like, you know what to do, probably. It's just like, how good are you at sticking to it? And that thing is probably I guess the simplest and the hardest thing to do, right? It's just like, how good are you at just focusing and getting stuff done?
Yeah. I like that idea of like breaking it down into systems. Like that's the easiest way to do everything, I think, for an entrepreneur as well. I guess when I think about how to block out distractions, first thing is that like I get distracted. There's definitely distractions that come up and they get me. I'm by no means perfect, but the way I personally deal with distractions is that I kind of would break this down into two components. The first one is like, shitty distractions, and just like, things like YouTube or TV or Netflix or something like that. Like distractions of like you just pick up your phone to do something and then you start like just doing shit that's completely unrelated to work. That's one version of distractions. The other version of distractions I think about are distractions that seem like they're important things at work, but they aren't necessarily important. And that is where I am a real sucker for getting distracted, because something will come onto my desk. I'll be like, yep, I should do this. It'll distract me from doing the work that I know I need to do, because that's like a fun, easy job that's just like ends up not progressing the company forward in the way I need. So I guess that, to solve the first version of distractions for me, the way I would think about that is like everything's like it's getting the reps in. So it's like it's giving yourself, like Jamie said, blocked time. So 2 hours, I'm not going to get distracted, and like just do this by minimizing your chance to get distracted. So don't have your phone near you. Don't like have YouTube available on the browser that you're using. Like block that off you. Like take as many extreme measures as you need to prevent you being able to have the distractions even popping up into your space. So that's one thing, just don't allow that. Work in like a very productive workspace. Don't just like work at your couch, like have a good desk, like just do all the normal things of like set your day up well, have a nice morning routine, get into work well, have time blocks. Like Jamie said, time blocks are so key for me. Like I'm going to have 2 hours of deep work right now where I don't do anything else, and then reward yourself and go for a walk at lunch or something like that. So, but just reduce your ability to even get distracted by not having access to any of the distractions. Then as far as, how do you not get distracted by unrelated or unnecessary work? I just have a system that I follow every single week for this. The first thing is that I start my week with like a total project review. What are the top like 5 to 6 things that I'm working on right now? And I look at them and I rate myself against them. Am I making enough progress? What's kind of like the high level? And I write like a mini report for myself, just like one sentence on each thing. Like this is going well, or this is behind. Here's where my major focus needs to be. Then as I'm planning out my week of the work I need to do, if there are like tasks coming up where like you need to do this thing for someone, I think, does this fit into my top 5 or 6 projects? If it doesn't, it's actually just not important, and cull that shit out there. So I like to have a top level framework that I work with all the time, which is what are the top, like big rocks that I'm working on all the time. And then you just have to be ruthless against it. And you need to know that almost nothing you do is that urgent or important. Like I know when like someone is asking you for something, it's the most important urgent thing for them, but like almost everything can wait. There's not a lot of stuff that can't wait. So it'll come back to you if it's really that important, but just say no. So that's the kind of way I think about distractions.
Yeah, that's a great way to think about it. There was a study done at the Harvard School of Business that asked essentially a bunch of professionals. They said, okay, so, what are the 3 most important things you need to get done per day? And they asked them to track this over a month. And then they said, how much time do you spend on those things? And what they found is people said, here's the 3 things. And they spent an average of 30% of their day working on those things. And so what it really demonstrated was a misalignment. It's really easy just to like go onto Twitter and be like, I'm going to learn about my market, right? And spend a lot of time doing that. And so another thing that if you work with like an executive coach, as an example, they'll say, whatever your most important things are, start the day with that and don't leave until those things are done. Because like, if you can say, I have to get these things done today, and you do, at the end of the day, it was a good day, right? And it's that simple. If you can check off the one most important thing every single day for the entire year, you've had a really good year, the chances are. And so again, this stuff is just like getting back to those basics and like not overthinking it, I think, is really kind of the key to it.
Nice. All right. Well, I'm going to try and wrap this one up. It feels like, you're dealing with a lot of distractions. First thing, that's super normal. I think everyone deals with that to varying degrees, and you need to come up with the system that works best for you. The first kind of like really simple, easy things to do are remove the distractions. So like, don't have YouTube easily available to you. Don't have Twitter easily available to you. Identify what those distractions are and just remove your ability to actually engage with those distractions. The next is time block. Make the calendar your boss. The calendar is my boss, absolutely. Like everything I do goes into my calendar and I'm time blocking everything out. Even if it's like, I need to do this 15-minute prep for a meeting. That goes in the calendar. So then I know I have the time set aside for the right stuff. And then I guess, on that, just be pretty honest with yourself and be pretty brutal with yourself. Like, did you do that? If not, like, why? Where did you slip up? Learn from that, and then take that distraction out again, and keep minimizing that. And then make sure you're working on the right work, not just busy work, which is a very hard thing to do for a founder. And do that the way Jamie said, which is like, have your top goal written down at a bare minimum. Make that your thing. Like, know what you should be doing that day. And if you want to go to a more comprehensive system, do a weekly review where your major projects are, and check, are you on track for this? If so, great. If no, change your time block, put more time towards that kind of work. And I think that's a good place to start. But we could talk about this for hours. But how you feeling, Jamie? Did I miss anything there?
Just one more tip again, that's something that's really easy to do. So as you look at your calendar, you can make everything green and red. Essentially, you can look back at your day and just color code. And if you're having some challenges with this, look at the end of the week and say, well, how much of this is green versus how much of this is red, and really look at the red and say, well, why didn't I get this done? And oftentimes it's because it wasn't important. So just drop it out. And your goal, of course, is just to get more consistent over time. So there's more green within what you're doing. So just another little easy trick.
Yeah, that's good. And I would just add one more thing as well, is that you're never going to get to 100%. I don't think. Like I've never personally met someone who is like, I'm 100% focused every day. So give yourself a little bit of a break, not massive, but just a little bit. Like, you're never going to get perfect, but you're always in the pursuit of more green. All right, that's it. AI career, you've been advised, and we'll move on to the next question. I'm very interested in your insights on this one, Jamie. This question is called, how do I stay in control? I need to be in control of things. Otherwise, I cannot guarantee success. I'm working on a project together with a team of 3 developers. So far, I avoided introducing any kind of hierarchy to ensure they are all self-motivated and don't feel controlled. However, that's now coming back to bite me. One of them is disagreeing on a few things with me and trying to push through his opinion on business matters. However, he's not a business guy. For example, he doesn't want to incorporate in a tax-friendly jurisdiction because he wants to pay taxes for better roads. Lovely, but that's not in the interest of the business. What measures can I take to be in control of business matters without being too authoritarian? This is from Land Penguin.
Joel, these are not 5-minute questions.
I know.
That's a big one. Well, the first thing I'll say is democracy rarely works in business. It's a great idea, right? And I've tried that to unfortunately little success. What you have to do is really be a dictator, but you have to be, a benefactor as you do it. And so at the end of the day, there has to be some chain of command and decisions have to be made. And so the most important thing is to listen and be empathetic, right? When you're actually listening and you're showing that to them, and then, what does showing that you care mean? It means time, it means time, right? So you're actually giving them time and you're taking that in. That's a way to really build that you've considered what they're saying and that you've heard them. Once you do that and you have the empathy, you can make, and you should make, decisions based on what you know is best for the business. And that can include what they said, but it doesn't have to be that, right? And so it's really important to say, hey, I've made this decision, but then explain why you've done it. And what I use actually is something pretty simple. It's called a decision diamond. I don't know if it's out there on the internet. I just made it up. But first and foremost, I listen to the users and whatever they're saying for pretty much whatever it is, whatever you're trying to figure out about a problem. Bring them into it. And even something like, where do I put my business and where do I pay taxes matters based on where you have users. I then look at subject matter experts. And so that's doing a lot of research, kind of looking at what's in the market. Then I, of course, talk to the team and take the team's input. And then finally, I look at the data. And so it's kind of all 4 of those things together create the decision diamond. each part is important. None of them are more necessarily more important than the other. They all have to be considered.
Yeah, I guess like I definitely agree. I definitely agree. Like someone needs to make a decision at the end of the day. I like that decision diamond process, and I like the fact that users are at the center of that. That should be the case all the time. I think I just think this person. I don't like the way they're asking, like, how do I stay in control? Because that for me, it just doesn't feel like he's thinking about this in the right way. The first thing is that I don't think at like any level of the business you should feel like you have to be in control of everything. That makes me think there's like two kind of key problems that this person is facing. One is that you should be in control of the area that you are in charge of and you are an expert at. So, for example, you're talking about a developer. They're giving you feedback on business and corporation stuff. That's okay. They can give you feedback on that, and you should listen to opinions where it makes sense and where you trust opinions. But that's not his jurisdiction. That is your jurisdiction. That is your decision to make, and you own that. That is clearly your responsibility. So it doesn't matter what that person wants to do. But in the inverse, this guy's a developer. The way they're developing the product and the platform and the architectural choices, that's his decision, or that's their decision. So I think the main problem you have here is a lack of clear responsibilities. Not everyone should be in control of everything. You should be in control of the areas that make sense to you. Once you get that clear and you get a really clear set of areas that you're responsible for, then it's clear you just make the decision. They just make the decision. It goes that way. People can have opinions though. People can have feedback, but you should only be in control of the things that actually make sense for you to be in control of. You shouldn't try and be in control of everything. And if you feel like you need to be in control of everything to guarantee success, it means that you have shitty employees and you need to change your employees. Like you need to have an amazing team that you can really rely on. And if you can really rely on your team, you don't feel like you need to control them. Like you should be like pushing as much responsibility and authority to them as possible, in my opinion, because they can bring so much more than you can bring. So for a developer, they should be so exceptional being a developer that you should not want to have to control that. But at inverse, they should stay in their lane. Everyone should stay in their lane. Everyone has lanes in businesses. No one knows how to do absolutely everything except probably Sam Altman. But he doesn't do this as well. He doesn't want to stay in control. All he does is he finds the right people and he empowers them in their area. That's the way I kind of think about that. And once you have that, then Jamie's decision-making framework makes sense. Start with users, get the right context, and then make the decision that's right for the business. But I guess, how do you think about that, Jamie?
I think it's right. It is right. The only challenge is, the CEO is accountable to everything, and so in some ways they must remain control, right? They must defer and delegate, but they have to do that in a way that they can hold that person accountable. And so that's where the empathy component really comes in, because at the end of the day, yes, the engineer is going to make the decisions, but the CEO is going to be the one that's on the line if that doesn't work out, and the investors are frustrated. And so that's how I interpreted quote unquote control. But I think you're much closer because that's a much more sophisticated version of control. And usually early stage founders are not particularly sophisticated, right? They're like, everything's on fire. I just want to control it. And what everybody says there is, look, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, you have to go together, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess I do agree with what you said at the beginning as well, which is that, this it is a team of four at this point. So at the end of the day, the decisions do come to you, but I think they come to you in the areas that it makes sense. And you will be responsible for everything. So if the company dies, that's on you. So you got to remember that and you got to take that. But I think you can make people feel heard, and you should actually listen to people, but you don't have to. Not everyone should even necessarily have an opinion on everything. And not every opinion is a good opinion. So you need to know that. So I think you should give space to hear out, but I think make the decisions where it makes sense for you to make the decisions, and don't make decisions where it doesn't make sense for you as well. Control your own desire for control in there. But I'll try and wrap this one up in a brief bit of a summary here. So, Land Penguin, you want to stay in control because you want to guarantee success. I'd say the first thing you need to do is that you need to get very clear set of responsibilities in your company, because right now everyone feels like they're responsible for everything. So everyone is trying to focus on everything, and everyone's wasting time and energy on areas that they actually shouldn't be wasting time and energy on, when they could be focusing on the areas that they're just fucking geniuses at. So keep people in their lane and let them contribute where they can, but know that at the end of the day, the decisions for different areas rely on different people. If that's the case and you feel like these people are making shitty decisions, there's a good chance they're the wrong people for your company. Maybe they're not shitty developers, but they're maybe not the right person for this stage of business for you. So consider, if you still feel like you need to be in control, why is that? Do you have shitty people? And start to replace the people as you need. And then once you have that right team set up and people are owning their own areas and you are making the right decisions for the company, use Jamie's decision diamond, okay? Act with empathy, hear people out properly, start with users, and then make decisions with all of the context from a place of caring and listening, and use that as input, but know that the decision does come down to you at the end of the day, but you've taken in every bit of information that you need.
Yeah. And just as a caution, remember, if you think you know something, that's pretty scary, right? Because the more beginner we are and the less that we think we know and the more that we listen, the better off we'll be. So no ideas are bad. So you don't want to discourage that person from giving you information. You just want to be able to deal with it in a way where if you make a decision that doesn't agree with it, you're still able to work together as a team and respect each other.
Yeah. And I think that's where, the clear areas of responsibility come into it as well. Like at the end of the day, they know you're responsible for this. So it's going to be on your shoulders. And what they're responsible is going to be on their shoulders too. But yeah, I guess make them feel valued at the same time. All right. So we'll close that one out and we'll move on to the last question of the day. And we're going to speed run this one. This one is called, how can I overcome analysis paralysis? I've been brainstorming with my co-founder regarding finalizing which idea to start working on. But the challenge is that we have been looking at a couple of ideas and we've been in the process of brainstorming and analyzing their pros and cons. Now we have analysis paralysis and we're spending way too much time thinking through each idea and not finalizing or progressing anything. One of the reasons for this is that we started a startup in the past, but we realized after a couple of months of working on it that we were not taking the right approach and there was too much competition in the market already, and it was hard to compete on that level and on that price point. So due to that reason, we're being more cautious now and don't want to lose money this time. Any suggestions on how we overcome this? And this is from Strange Necessary 9098.
Yeah, so the old adage is just get started, right? And people talk about that all the time. Now, let's take a step back and actually break that down. So, how do we get to great outcomes? And great outcomes, really, there's only two things that go into it. And so, number one are the decisions that we make, and then number two is the luck that happens to us. So, our goal anytime we do anything is to make better decisions and create more surface area for luck. So, how do you do that? Sounds great, really straightforward. It's not so simple, but it is. And so, it's really about getting started and prototyping. So actually getting away from thinking big and instead thinking small. And I know as a founder, you have the big vision, but I'm here to tell you, you have to earn your way into that. And I use this term all the time. You have to earn the right to move to the next stage. And so when you start early, and this is just a good practice in general, try to make it as small as possible. Whatever you're thinking about, think, how do I get to something that I can test quickly? And then how do I get it into the market to get that feedback? And so you might be thinking about building a certain software platform. Just make wireframes. And you might say, well, I want to take this to this type of user. Well, find a Reddit, thread where they're at, and then send those wireframes out and say, hey, I'm looking for some feedback. I know that everybody in this community is excited about this and has felt this pain. And I have this idea and I'm trying to get started. It's as simple as that, right? If you do that and you capture the information and you learn from it, and then you continually iterate on that, you'll find pretty quickly if you're onto something or you're not. And so your goal is to do as many things as possible in the air, and have them be or. So or. So try to finish something enough to get some good feedback on it and say, okay, that's going to work, or I need to do this, instead of and. So a lot of people think of it as like stepwise, but it's not, right? It's try to get a lot of stuff in the air to understand where to actually invest time and do that in a really small way. And, there's a lot of great quotes on moving quickly here. And, Sam Altman is known for saying, build the fastest iterating company the world's ever seen. And certainly we want to take that to heart. But it's not just about speed, because speed is, miles per hour. But velocity is net distance per time. And so it's net, it's like miles per hour. But if you are running into each other, you're not making any progress. So it's really important that you align on a direction. Pick something. Something's better than nothing. Try it, move all together, and then see what kind of velocity comes from that.
Yeah. I like the idea of earn your right to get to the next level. And a term as you're talking that just kept bouncing around in my head that I've never said before, I don't think, is start small, validate big. So the first thing is like, I'm glad that, Strange Necessary has done some thinking about this. You've founded a business before and you're going again. Like, that's awesome. And it's super commendable. And I love that. I love that you're taking it a little bit of time to work out, like, well, what direction that you want to go, do you want to go in? You've got a bunch of different ideas, but you do need to start, but you need to start small. Maybe what the issue was before wasn't necessarily the market or anything that you chose in, is just that you invested way too big on that. So say you've got, one or two or three ideas there. Start small on all of them, but validate your ideas. You can't just sit at your desk and work out, is this, you can't think your way to success. You need to check it as you go. So just pick something and do what Jamie said. Start as small as possible with each idea and start to validate. Is this worth going to the next stage? Like, is this technically possible? Yes. Cool. Next thing, do users want this? Well, get some wireframes out. Does that Reddit thread engage with it? Great. Now build an MVP. If you advertise it, do people click on the website? Great. What's the next stage? Like, only go to the next stage after you validated the previous stage. So I just say, start small, build the smallest possible thing you can, and validate and validate and validate to work out, is this the right journey? Is this the right direction? Is this the right idea?
Yeah. And jumping on that, the Pareto principle 80-20, basically 20% of what we take in delivers 80% of the value. It's true with data, right? So a little data goes a long way. And you're like, well, I want to know the whole picture. You're never going to know everything. And so there is some element of luck to it anyway. So get a little bit and start learning. And the most important thing you can do is talk to customers. So when I talk, to startups, the number one word I give them or term I give them is customer obsession. How many conversations are you having with potential customers, and how are you having those conversations? Are they open-ended? Are you getting actual feedback, or are you doing something instead? It's giving confirmation bias. And then how are you taking that and bringing it into the organization and applying it? The best organizations do that at every single step in every single department. Wherever they are, it's just part of their fabric. And by the way, when you listen to someone like Sam Altman, he'll talk about going really, really fast. But if you listen to him, he'll also say things like, so talk to your customer, and then come back, and it's implicit that you would do that. And so sometimes he gets himself in trouble because he's just like, of course you would talk to customers. And it is natural once you do it. But for many founders, it's something that's uncomfortable because you're not necessarily sure. And like, well, why would they talk to me? And you forget, well, if you have something that's valuable, like, people want you to be successful. And as soon as you remember that, you start reaching out to people. Of course, if it's a good idea, they're going to tell you that, and they want to help in any way they can.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's wrap this one up because I think we're getting pretty aligned here. So for Strange Necessary, how do you overcome analysis paralysis? Really simply, start small, validate big. So just pick one of your ideas and get started on it, but start in the smallest possible way you can, whether that's a conversation or wireframes, and then start validating that with your customers. And by validating with your customers, the follow on from that means be very customer obsessed. Speak to your customers the whole way through this journey. And that is the validation. That is what I mean by validation. So get real customer feedback and measure real customer actions as your way to move forward. And then you won't be stuck in analysis paralysis because the data and the journey will be presenting itself in front of you. And that's it. You have been advice Strange Necessary. So we're going to jump to the last section of the show, my favorite section of the show, which is plugs. So Jamie, what's going on? What do you want to plug at the moment?
If you like any of this, you want to meet me, just add me on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to have a conversation. Other than that, I'm not a commercial pusher.
All right. I love it. Any books that you've loved over the past year? You're a big reader.
I just finished Outlive by Peter Attia, which is about health span, and it's an excellent read.
All right. Love it. Then on my side, do not forget to like and subscribe on your favorite platforms and all of the platforms. Get your phone out right now. Go to YouTube, hit subscribe, comment on a few videos, hit likes, go to Spotify, do the same thing. And I'll say it for every podcast, go and steal a phone and do the same thing. Stealing is totally condoned by this podcast as long as you're liking and subscribing on their phone as well. They'll enjoy it when you give it back to them. And thanks to everyone who writes in. We love your problems. We love these. We love answering these questions. And if you have any questions that you want us to answer, send them through to podcast@joeldigitalplanner.com. That's it, mate. Thank you so much for coming on. I love this conversation. There's so many more questions that I want to get to, so I'll very likely get you on another episode soon, just because this is it's always a fun way to hang out. But thank you so much for coming on today.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Awesome. Well, this has been another episode of the Do As I Say, Not As I Did podcast. We'll see you all next week.